In 2010, I became aware of a man named Ray Kurzweil. I don't really remember exactly how I became aware of him. I knew around this time I started watching the Penn and Teller series Bullshit, and I collected, I believe there's 8 seasons. I got them all, and I was watching through them. And now I've always been a person who has been basically skeptical. A lot of things with religion, supernatural, the unexplained, what have you, while interesting, never seem to add up or make any sense to me. Things that there isn't evidence for, I've just never been convinced of until there's evidence. I just kind of keep an open mind about everything. And in that area of time, I became aware of this guy, Ray Kurzweil. Now, he was an author, and he had these books. So this was his book, The Singularity is Near, and then came Fantastic Voyage, Transcend, How to Create a Mind. I started buying and reading his books as they came out. He was what's called a futurist. He still is, I guess. And he showed that anything in a technology field grows exponentially. It's not just Moore's law. It's not just computers and computing and microchips and what have you. It's anything in a technology field. So this goes back to the Industrial Revolution and continues on to today with artificial intelligence. So this was 15 years ago, and at the time, really nobody was on board with this exponential growth kind of thing. They felt all of his timelines were way off. He was predicting things to happen much quicker than the experts of any field felt that they would happen by centuries. But he showed, going back to the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, how everything matched up perfectly on the timeline with exponential growth. Everything. Very convincing. And he started to gain a lot of popularity. And I got to watch him in interviews with people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who didn't buy into anything he had to say until they started talking. And within a few minutes, Dr. Tyson, anybody. But really, Dr. Tyson stood out to me, where you could see him change his mind in real time and get on board with it and say, oh, I understand what you're saying. Up until this point, I thought I understood exponential growth. I can explain it. I'm convinced I understand it, but really, I didn't. I was just convincing myself of it. But it's not how the human mind works. The human mind is developed through evolution. If you are out in the plains of Africa and a lion is chasing you, you need to know that if it's moving at this rate of speed, then at this point in time in the future, it will be here. And that's where you do not want to be. You want to be over here, or you want to be over here to evade it. So the mind works in a linear fashion. It doesn't work in an exponential fashion. You have to really work at it and fight your own brain. It was around this time I got a lot of documentaries on the human mind and how it tricks you and all the shortcuts it takes that you don't realize. So where am I going with all this? Well, at the time, one of the things that Ray was doing was he was having everything about his health, his medical makeup, tested in every way. And he was taking supplements and vitamins and minerals, and he was taking, I forget what it was, 45, 80 something pills a day, and constantly having his blood tested and seeing what is this doing for me? What is it not doing for me? It was all part of what he says, trying to increase the human lifespan so that he could reach the singularity. According to Ray Kurzweil, the singularity is in 2045. And that's when everything is increasing so fast you can no longer predict anything. And being an older man, he was trying to make it to that age, because part of all of this was his prediction that now that medicine has entered the technological field, it now grows at an exponential rate, as opposed to linearly like it did before through trial and error. That is no longer the case. Artificial intelligence and computer models now work on the developing of medicines and the medical field. And Ray was explaining that around the time of the singularity, the projected human lifespan was going to increase to a speed and distance that it would outpace your aging. Therefore, meaning you could keep extending your life, radical life extension, live long enough to live forever. Other things would come into play. You would be able to do things like upload your mind file, 3D print out a new body or multiple bodies to download the mind file into all of them that are all connected to each other, live multiple lives simultaneous. There's a lot to this. He became so popular, Google hired him to run their entire research and development engineering arm to the company. He was in charge of language learning models, which have now become things like ChatGPT, all of these artificial intelligences that we use nowadays. But there was something I noticed. Yes, all of his predictions came true according to his timelines, but when I became aware of him, all of these had already happened. According to Ray, he was predicting these before they would happen, and he was also back mapping back prior to his lifetime and matching everything up. But supposedly, he was saying this is going to happen at this time, this is going to happen at this time, and then they would come true. No one would believe him, and then they would believe him. And as you get closer and closer to the time something's about to happen, more and more people get on board. Not that they say, oh, we see where you're coming from. It just becomes so much more apparent to people because you can't deny reality as it's happening. It's just as you try to think ahead, subconsciously, no matter how educated and intelligent you are, your brain thinks linearly, and you're not going to see exponential leaps until you're right on the cusp of whatever it was that was predicted way back when. It's now no longer seeming like an exponential leap. It's just the next step. So my thing was, what is he predicting for the future that I can see? Is it going to happen? Of course, the big thing is the singularity 2045, but that's so far off. So really, the only two things that were going to happen in the relative near future from when I got on board. Look, the latest book I got from him, which was years ago, I even got the signed copy. So here's the two things. The first one was by 2020, we would all be in self-driving cars. Now, through the 20-teens, things were going in that direction. The self-driving cars were coming out. Licenses and license plates were being issued for them. There are towns that do have them. There are companies that were jumping on board, long-distance trucking companies, delivery companies like Amazon, this and that, but it just kind of never really progressed beyond just the dawn of it. We are now in 2025, so it's 15 years after I started on this Ray Kurzweil journey. It's 5 years after we're supposedly all going to be in self-driving cars, and I've never seen a self-driving car. I've never met anybody that has one, let alone all of us in it. Okay, it still could happen. It still could be on its way. It's fine. Here's the other big one. Ray predicted in the 2020s, we would have a one world government. Well, we're halfway through the decade. It's 2025, and it seems like the most remote thing to ever happen. I don't see any evidence that we are anywhere near that in any time frame, not even to predict it 100 years off. It looks like it's just fantasy land nonsense. Okay, so we still got half a decade to go. And so what if a few predictions don't come true? What's the real deal here? Well, when I first got into this, I too started getting onto supplementation, vitamins and minerals and stuff. And I was up to somewhere around 40 pills a day, every day for 3 years. Now, I felt it did absolutely nothing for me, but I don't really have any medical data on that. I never had any testing, and I was still kind of in my prime. You see, 15 years ago in 2010, I was 35 years old. I reached my physical prime at 42, so 7 years later, and it was within that 7-year time frame that I was taking my supplementations. Now, look, I'm 50 years old now. I've never smoked. I've never drank. I've never taken any drugs. I don't take prescription pills. I have stayed active. I've had an exercise routine of weights and cardio and stretching and all that. Going back to, when I was 14, 1988, This is 2025 now, so I have always tried to maintain the best health I could. And yet I peaked at 42. It's been downhill ever since. But what about Ray? Ray is the one who has been at the forefront of all of this, who is still at the forefront of all of it. He's getting the testing, okay? In the last 15 years, Ray Kurzweil, in my opinion, has aged 30 years. He didn't slow things down. He didn't start to reverse them. He did nothing. Just like my limited experience with this, I felt did nothing for me. In my opinion, nothing he has done anything for his physical health or mental health. If you watch current interviews with him from within the last few months, and you can watch them from a year ago and 2 years ago, it's not just like a bad day. And you compare them back to the interviews of him from 2010 and before, he is a completely different human being. Not only does he look so much older, even though now he's wearing like a really bad wig and got plastic surgery to try to look younger. That never works, okay? But his mental faculties, he is just really, really slow in talking. He doesn't say anything quick-witted or new or interesting. It's like an old cassette recording of him from 15 years ago played at 25% speed and coming out of his own grandfather's mouth. And now he has his latest book out. The Singularity is Nearer. And I'm not going to buy it. I've read some reviews, and they're not bad reviews. They're not good reviews either. I can't really make heads or tails of them. I'm just trying to see what new does Ray have to say. And it doesn't look like he has anything new to say at all. I'm not seeing anyone point out that his predictions after these books didn't come true. Nobody's pointing that out, and certainly Ray doesn't point it out in his newest book from what I can gather. And there really are no other predictions after that except for the Singularity, which I don't think Ray is going to reach. And there's a part of me that feels I may not reach it either. Yes, it's only 20 years away. I will be 70 years old. Now, genetically, I should make it. My grandparents on both sides of my family lived into their 90s to their hundreds. Both of my parents are in their mid-70s. They're still going fine. As far as I can tell, on both sides of my family, I am the only person that takes care of my health. I am in a family of smokers and drinkers and morbidly obese, and they live forever. And they're like me. They're never really patients in the hospital. Nothing really seems to go wrong with them. Now, you have people that actively have tried to destroy their bodies, like my mom, who has had cancer half a dozen times and what have you, and still doing perfectly fine. And she'll be 75 years old in a couple of weeks. So barring any unforeseen events, I should live quite a while. But I'm telling you, I feel like a shadow of my former self. Yes, I said I peaked 8 years ago, but it's more than that. I can't get over the fact that I have to wear glasses now. I had fighter pilot vision, and now I've got these stupid glasses on. I can't get over the fact that the ringing in my ears from tinnitus is overwhelmingly just all-encompassing at all times. I have to play YouTube videos or something in the background 24/7 to take my mind off of the endless ringing in my ears. And if it wasn't for that, I could barely hear anything. I feel everything with me has gone downhill. Motivation, energy levels. I used to never get sick. Now I get sick and the sickness stays and I don't recover from it. I don't know. I kind of feel like I'm looking at my own life through a very cloudy lens. I have the opportunity now to do things I only dreamed of, and I do them now, and I photograph them, and I film them, and I document them, and when I look at these photographs and films and things, it's like an out-of-body experience. It's all just very surreal to me. I don't feel like I'm actually living my life. I feel like I'm just hazily, cloudily looking at things that resemble a life. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like I'm slipping away from everything. I don't really make personal connections with people anymore, and all the people I had close personal connections with, they're all gone. I feel very detached. And I'm gonna leave this video at that.